I signed the wrong transfer and woke on the alien warlord's flagship. Then she saluted. What could possibly make an alien warlord salute the person who signed the wrong transfer? And why was he the one standing on her flagship? Hello, and welcome, everyone. If you enjoy mysterious science fiction stories filled with unexpected encounters and unforgettable twists, you are in the right place. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Thank you for being here and for supporting the channel. Before we begin, tell us where in the world you are watching from and what time is it for you right now. We love seeing how far these stories travel. Take a breath, settle in, and get comfortable. Chung ta bat dau veo cu chuyen. The first thing Daniel Mercer heard was the sound of a ship that did not belong to Earth. It was a low mechanical hum beneath the floor, steady enough to feel through the mattress, followed by a soft hiss of recycled air carrying a faint metallic scent. He opened his eyes. Silver walls. Narrow lights. No window. No familiar insignia. Daniel sat up slowly, his mind still trying to catch up with the room. Then the door opened. Two alien guards stood outside in dark uniforms, perfectly still. Behind them came a woman with sapphire blue skin, silver white hair, and golden eyes that seemed almost luminous beneath the corridor lights. Daniel recognized authority before he understood anything else. She stopped 3 steps away. The room became silent. Then, to his complete confusion, the alien warlord raised one hand to her chest and gave him a formal salute. Daniel stared at her. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I think you have the wrong guy." Her expression did not change. "That," she replied, "is what I need to determine." Daniel looked down at himself. He was still wearing the plain gray transfer uniform from the civilian logistics station on Earth. No armor, no rank insignia, no weapon, nothing that explained why the commander of an alien flagship would salute him. His memory came back in fragments. A transfer order, a digital signature, a late shift, a cup of cold coffee beside a terminal. He remembered clicking the confirmation button because the system had marked the reassignment as routine. After that, nothing. He looked past the warlord into the corridor. The walls were too tall. The lighting was too clean. Strange symbols moved across transparent displays. Somewhere beyond the metal bulkheads, something enormous thrummed with restrained power. "Where am I?" Daniel asked. The warlord studied him for another long moment. "You are aboard the flagship Resolute Dawn." "That sounds expensive." One of the guards shifted slightly. The warlord did not smile, but something changed in her eyes. "You are not afraid." Daniel almost laughed. "I woke up on an alien warship after signing what I thought was a transfer form. I am definitely afraid." Her golden eyes narrowed. "Then why are you joking?" Daniel looked at the ceiling. "Because panic has never improved a situation." The warlord considered that answer. Then she turned toward the guards. "Leave us." They obeyed immediately. The doors closed behind them with a heavy magnetic click. Daniel noticed the warlord watching his hands. "If you are checking for a weapon," he said, "you will be disappointed." "I am checking for familiarity." "With what?" She stepped closer to the terminal beside his bed and activated a screen. A file appeared. Daniel's name was at the top. Beneath it was a photograph of a younger man who looked almost exactly like him. Daniel stared. The date beneath the photograph made his stomach tighten. It was 8 years old. "That is not possible," he whispered. The warlord folded her hands behind her back. "You signed the transfer 12 hours ago." Daniel looked from the file to her face. "Then why do you have a record of me from 8 years ago?" She did not answer. Instead, she gave him the same formal salute. This time, Daniel understood one thing clearly. Whatever mistake had placed him aboard her flagship, she did not believe it was a mistake anymore. If you remember signing the transfer, then you are already missing something. Daniel Mercer stared at the alien commander across the quiet cabin, trying to decide whether that sentence was meant as a warning or a fact. The room smelled faintly of heated circuitry and recycled air. A thin strip of white light ran along the ceiling, reflecting across polished silver walls. Somewhere beneath his feet, the flagship hummed with the deep mechanical rhythm of a machine large enough to carry an army. Daniel looked again at the file on the terminal. His name, his face, an 8-year-old date. He touched the screen. "I have never seen this." General Seraphine Vera watched him without blinking. Her sapphire blue skin caught the cold light, while her silver white hair rested neatly behind her shoulders. The golden glow of her eyes made it difficult for Daniel to tell where calculation ended and curiosity began. You were not supposed to see it, she said. Then why show me? Because the transfer changed that. Daniel leaned back against the edge of the medical berth. Let me get this straight. I work civilian logistics on Earth. I sign a routine reassignment. I wake up on an alien flagship. Your people have a record of me from 8 years ago, and nobody thinks this is strange. Seraphine's expression remained composed. Everyone thinks this is strange. Good. Daniel exhaled. At least we agree on something. A faint movement touched the corner of her mouth. It disappeared almost immediately. Your humor is unusual. It is cheaper than therapy. She studied him for another moment. Then she activated the cabin door. Walk with me. Daniel hesitated. Am I being detained? No. Am I free to leave? Not yet. That sounds remarkably close. Human, she said, turning toward him. If I intended to imprison you, I would not have given you a question to ask. Daniel considered that. Fair point. He followed her into the corridor. The flagship was enormous. The passage stretched farther than the length of the warehouse where Daniel had worked on Earth, with dark metallic walls interrupted by translucent panels carrying unfamiliar symbols. Alien crew members moved aside as Seraphine passed. Some looked at Daniel with curiosity. Others looked away too quickly. Nobody spoke. Daniel noticed something else. Every few yards, a small silver emblem appeared on the wall. A circle crossed by 3 narrow lines. He had seen it before. Not on the flagship. On the old photograph. What is that symbol? He asked. Seraphine stopped. You recognize it. I did not say that. You looked at it twice. Daniel glanced at her. You watch everything, do you not? When something does not make sense, yes. They reached a transparent command door overlooking the main operations deck. Hundreds of displays floated above consoles. Navigation charts moved silently. Engineers worked beneath blue-white illumination. At the center stood a circular platform surrounded by officers. The moment Daniel entered, the room changed. Conversations stopped. One officer stood, then another. Within seconds, every person on the deck was facing him. Daniel looked at Seraphine. Why are they staring? She did not answer. Instead, she stepped onto the central platform and spoke clearly. Resume operations. The officers obeyed, but none looked comfortable. Daniel lowered his voice. They know something. Yes. Do you? Seraphine looked directly at him. I know enough to be concerned. A display suddenly appeared above the command platform. It showed the same old photograph from Daniel's file. Beneath it was a designation he had never seen before. Earth Operations Specialist, classified. Daniel's throat tightened. That is not my job. Seraphine's eyes remained fixed on him. Perhaps not the job you remember. The flagship hummed beneath them. Then another message appeared. This time, it carried a date from 8 years ago and a single line of text. Transfer accepted by subject. Daniel stared at it. He remembered the form he had signed yesterday. He remembered the signature. He remembered the confirmation. But now one question would not leave his mind. If he had already accepted this transfer 8 years ago, what exactly had he signed yesterday? You were never transferred here, Daniel. You were returned. Seraphine's words followed him long after they left the command deck. Daniel walked beside her through another corridor, listening to the steady vibration of the flagship beneath his boots. The strange silver emblem appeared again on the walls, glowing softly whenever they passed. Return from where? He asked. That is what we are trying to determine. You keep saying we. Because I do not have the answer either. Daniel stopped. Seraphine stopped with him. For the first time, her controlled expression showed something close to uncertainty. She activated a private display between them. A star map appeared. Earth was marked in blue. Far beyond it, another point pulsed in gold. A thin route connected the two. 8 years ago, Seraphine said, a human vessel entered our territory without warning. Daniel studied the map. What vessel? A survey ship. I have never been on a survey ship. That is what your records say. Daniel looked at her. And what do your records say? Seraphine's eyes remained on the display. They say you were aboard. The room seemed colder. Daniel folded his arms. Doing what? Helping people. He almost laughed. That is not a job description. It was not a job. She enlarged the old file. A list of names appeared beneath his photograph. Most were marked as civilians. Some were scientists. Others were transport specialists. Beside Daniel's name was a simple notation, remain behind. What does that mean? He asked. Your vessel had to leave the region. And I stayed. Yes. Why? Seraphine looked directly at him. Because someone had to keep the station running. Daniel stared at the screen. That sounded like him. Not the mysterious designation. Not the classified title. But the simple decision to stay when leaving would have been easier. He rubbed his forehead. I do not remember any of this. We believe your memory was altered. Daniel looked up sharply. By whom? We do not know. Then why bring me here? Because the same transfer authorization appeared again yesterday. Daniel's eyes narrowed. You said the transfer changed everything. It did. She moved to another file. A signature appeared. Daniel recognized it immediately. It was his. Beneath it was a second authorization, written in an unfamiliar language. Seraphine translated it. Return subject to original command. Daniel stared at the words. Original command? That is what concerns me. You are the commander. Not according to this document. He looked at her. Then who is? Seraphine did not answer. Instead, she opened a sealed archive. A recording began. The image was grainy, old, and clearly captured inside a human facility. A younger Daniel stood beside a group of civilians. He looked tired. His clothes were different, but his face was unmistakable. The younger Daniel looked into the recording device and spoke calmly. If this message reaches Earth, the transfer worked. Current Daniel felt his breathing slow. The recording continued. I know I will not remember this. That is the point. Seraphine watched him carefully. Younger Daniel continued. If you are seeing this, do not trust the transfer order. Trust the person who shows you this recording. The recording ended. Silence filled the corridor. Daniel looked at Seraphine. You showed me. Yes. So I am supposed to trust you. No, she shook her head. You are supposed to decide whether I have earned it. Daniel looked back at the dark screen. For the first time since waking aboard the flagship, he stopped trying to understand how he had arrived. A different question had become more important. Why had he once chosen to forget? The flagship's engine vibration changed at 2:17 ship time, and Daniel Mercer noticed before the warning system did. The floor gave a faint shiver beneath his boots. A row of blue indicators along the corridor flickered once, then returned to steady light. Daniel stopped walking. Seraphine noticed immediately. What is it? She asked. Something changed. You felt that. I worked around machinery for 15 years. Machines have moods. She gave him a skeptical look. You believe machines have moods? I believe they complain before they fail. They reached the central systems chamber. Through a wide glass partition, hundreds of small status lights moved across a wall of equipment. The air smelled faintly of warm metal and filtered coolant. Daniel watched the displays for several seconds. One pressure value was moving in a pattern that looked almost normal. Almost. There, he said. Seraphine followed his gaze. What am I looking at? The transfer conduit. It is operating within limits. The numbers are within limits. The timing is not. She studied him. Explain. Daniel pointed to the display. The system is compensating too often. Something is forcing it to correct itself. Seraphine immediately contacted the bridge. Report on the secondary power network. A calm voice answered through the overhead speaker. Stable. Daniel shook his head. Ask them to check the timing intervals. Seraphine looked at him. You are certain? No, he paused. But I would rather be wrong while checking. She gave the order. Seconds passed. Then the bridge answered. There is a 17-millisecond delay between the primary and secondary systems. Seraphine's expression changed. That should not be possible. Daniel nodded. Exactly. He moved toward the control station. Can I access the diagnostic layer? Seraphine stepped aside. You have permission. Daniel opened the maintenance interface. The system presented him with several layers of technical information. He ignored most of them. Numbers, timing, energy flow, signal repetition. He had learned long ago that complicated systems often hid simple problems beneath impressive screens. There, he whispered. A small line of code appeared beneath the transfer authorization. It carried the same silver emblem they had seen throughout the flagship. Seraphine leaned closer. That symbol again. Daniel nodded. Someone embedded it in the transfer system. Can you remove it? I do not know what it does. Then why touch it? Daniel looked at her. I am not going to remove it. He opened a separate diagnostic window. I am going to ask it what it wants. Seraphine stared at him. You speak to unknown software. Not exactly. Daniel typed a simple command. I give it a question and see what it does. The screen went dark. Then one line appeared. Authorized subject present. Daniel's hand stopped. Seraphine read the message twice. It recognizes you. Apparently. Another line appeared. Original transfer status. Incomplete. Daniel frowned. What does that mean? Seraphine looked at him. Perhaps your first transfer never ended. A third message appeared. Return protocol active. The chamber lights dimmed. Daniel felt the same cold sensation he had felt when watching the old recording. Return me where? He asked quietly. The system did not answer. Instead, the star map appeared again. Earth glowed blue on one side. A second destination appeared far beyond the known routes. Seraphine's expression became unreadable. That location, she said, is not part of any current navigation chart. Daniel looked at the coordinates. Then someone wants us to go there. Not us. She pointed to the display. A single designation appeared beside the route. Subject 1. Daniel stared at it. That would be me. Seraphine nodded. Yes. The ship's vibration changed again. This time, every light in the chamber turned gold. A quiet tone moved through the flagship. Daniel looked at Seraphine. That sounds important. She listened carefully. It is a command signal. From who? Her golden eyes remained fixed on the map. That is what I am afraid to discover. Daniel looked at the route again. He had spent the last hour trying to understand why he had been brought aboard the flagship. Now he finally had a destination. The problem was that nobody had told him who was waiting there. The flagship changed course 12 minutes later. Daniel Mercer felt it through the soles of his boots before the navigation display confirmed it. The deep vibration beneath the deck softened, then settled into a new rhythm. He stood beside the observation window with a cup of coffee that tasted exactly as bad as the first one on Earth. Seraphine stood across from him, studying the unfamiliar route glowing across the glass. How long until we reach the destination? Daniel asked. 4 hours. That is not very reassuring. It was not intended to be. Daniel looked at the stars. They seemed almost motionless from inside the ship, cold points scattered across an endless black field. You said this location is outside your charts. Yes. Then how does your ship know where to go? Seraphine paused. That is what concerns me. She touched the navigation display. The route changed slightly, correcting itself without any command from the bridge. Daniel leaned closer. It is adjusting. The system is choosing the path. Can you stop it? I can. But I do not know what happens if I do. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we should not stop it yet. Seraphine looked at him. You are comfortable following an unknown navigation system? No. Yet you agree to continue. I did not say I was comfortable. A quiet smile appeared on her face. You make a distinction often. It keeps me sane. They continued toward the observation deck. Along the way, Daniel noticed the crew watching him. The reaction was different now. Nobody looked openly suspicious. Instead, there was something closer to uncertainty mixed with respect. He wondered what the old version of himself had done to create that reaction. At the observation deck, Seraphine opened another archive. This time the file contained no photograph, only a voice recording. A younger Daniel spoke through faint static. If you are hearing this, then the return protocol has activated. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment. Hearing his own voice from 8 years earlier felt stranger than waking on an alien flagship. I need you to understand something. The recording continued. The people aboard this ship are not your enemies. Seraphine looked at him. That message was addressed to you. Apparently. Why would you tell yourself that? Daniel listened. The younger voice continued. If you meet the Varen commander, do not judge her by her title. She will expect fear. Give her honesty instead. The recording ended. Daniel opened his eyes. Seraphine was watching him carefully. You knew me, she said. Maybe. You trusted me. Maybe. She looked away toward the stars. I do not remember meeting you. Neither do I. Silence settled between them. Then Daniel noticed something on the console. A small indicator had turned green. What is that? Seraphine turned. Communication channel. From Earth. No, the channel opened automatically. A calm voice filled the observation deck. Return subject confirmed. Daniel looked at Seraphine. That phrase again. The voice continued. Memory restoration threshold approaching. Daniel's expression tightened. Memory restoration? Seraphine stepped closer. Daniel. He looked at her. I think I know what happened 8 years ago. What? I did not lose my memory by accident. The stars moved slowly beyond the glass. Daniel looked down at his hands. I asked someone to take it away. Seraphine's voice softened. Why? He shook his head. I do not know yet. The communication channel remained open. Then another sentence appeared on the display. Memory restoration will begin upon arrival. Daniel stared at it. For hours suddenly felt much shorter than they had before. Seraphine stood beside him, no longer looking like an alien warlord or a distant commander. She looked like someone who had just realized the person beside her had once trusted her enough to forget everything. When we arrive, Daniel said quietly, I may remember why I left. Seraphine nodded. And if you do not like what you remember? Daniel watched the stars. Then I will decide what to do with it now. The flagship continued into the unknown, carrying two people toward a place neither fully understood. Behind them, the familiar stars of known space slowly disappeared. Ahead, one distant point began to glow. The distant point of light grew larger as the flagship approached, but it did not become a star. It became a structure. Daniel Mercer stood at the forward observation window, watching a vast ring of silver architecture emerge from the darkness, its surface covered with faint lines of blue light. The object was silent. No transmissions. No navigation beacon. Yet the flagship continued toward it with complete confidence. Seraphine stood beside him, her golden eyes fixed on the structure. That is where the memory restoration will begin, she said. Daniel nodded. You have been here before? No, then how do you know? Because the ship knows. Daniel looked toward the command display. I am starting to dislike that answer. A quiet tone sounded through the deck. The flagship slowed. The stars seemed to drift backward until the enormous structure filled the window. A circular gateway opened in its center. There was no visible machinery, no moving parts, only a smooth field of pale light. Seraphine touched the communications panel. Identify yourself. The reply came immediately. Varen command vessel recognized. Human subject recognized. Daniel looked at her. It keeps calling me a subject. Perhaps it does not understand individuality. I hope it learns. The flagship crossed the threshold. For a few seconds, everything outside the window disappeared into white light. Daniel felt pressure in his ears, followed by a strange sensation behind his eyes. A memory surfaced. Not a complete image, just a sound. A door closing. Someone breathing. His own voice saying, Do not let me remember this until it is safe. Daniel grabbed the edge of the console. Seraphine noticed. What did you see? A room. Where? I do not know. Another fragment appeared. A blue hand resting on a table. A silver emblem. A younger Seraphine standing across from him. Daniel stared at her. You were there. Seraphine became very still. Yes. The memory faded before he could hold it. Daniel closed his eyes. I asked you to erase something. You asked me to protect something. He opened his eyes. What? She looked toward the structure outside. A decision. The flagship entered a vast internal chamber. The walls were covered with transparent panels displaying thousands of historical records. Some were human. Most were alien. Daniel saw images of Earth from 8 years earlier. He saw the station where he had worked. He saw himself walking through a corridor beside people he did not recognize. Then the display changed. A group of civilians appeared on screen. Their faces were calm. They were waiting beside a damaged transport system. Daniel remembered the room. He remembered the cold floor beneath his boots. He remembered the warning lights. He remembered staying behind. They were stranded, he whispered. Seraphine nodded. Yes. Another memory returned. He had been given a choice. Leave with the evacuation vessel or remain behind to stabilize the station. He had stayed. Not because he had been ordered to. Because the system still needed someone who understood it. Daniel opened his eyes. That is why the record says remained behind. Yes. And you were there. I was. What happened after? Seraphine's expression softened. You saved the station. Daniel shook his head. I repaired a system. You repaired it while everyone else waited for permission to leave. She looked at him. That distinction matters to us. Daniel looked down. So why did I erase my memory? Seraphine hesitated. Because someone wanted the knowledge of what you discovered. What did I discover? Before she could answer, the entire chamber illuminated. A message appeared across every display. Original subject memory restoration complete. Daniel felt the final fragment return. A quiet room. Seraphine beside him. A sealed document between them. His own voice speaking clearly. If they find out what the human systems can do, they will come for Earth. The memory ended. Daniel looked at Seraphine. She did not need to explain. He finally remembered why he had left. He had not been running from the alien warlord. He had been protecting Earth from what he had learned about the technology surrounding it. And now the transfer had brought him back to the place where that secret had begun. If they find out what the human systems can do, they will come for Earth. Daniel Mercer heard his own forgotten voice inside the memory, calm and certain, and for several seconds he could not move. The chamber around him remained silent, filled only by the soft hum of the ancient structure. Seraphine stood nearby, watching him carefully. "You remember now?" she said. Daniel nodded. "Enough." He looked toward the displays showing the sealed technology hidden throughout the station. "You knew about this the whole time. I knew part of it. And you helped me forget. You asked me to." Daniel looked at her. "Why did you agree?" Seraphine took a slow breath. "Because you trusted me." That answer landed harder than any explanation could have. Daniel turned toward the main console. A map of the surrounding region appeared, covered with faint golden pathways. "What did I discover 8 years ago?" Seraphine stepped beside him. "A network." "A network of what?" "Transit gates. Communication relays. Energy systems." Daniel studied the map. "Human technology?" "No." She touched one of the symbols. "Older." Daniel understood. "And someone wants access to it." "Yes." A new message appeared on the display. "Access request received." Daniel frowned. "From whom?" Seraphine looked at the source identification. "An unknown authority." "Can you reject it?" "I can." "Then do it." She did not move. "There is a problem." "What?" "The request carries your authorization." Daniel stared at the screen. "My authorization?" "Your original authorization." He remembered the old recording. The warning. The erased memory. The choice he had made. "Then I must have expected this." Seraphine looked at him. "You did." Daniel walked slowly around the console. "There has to be a reason I left the access open. Perhaps you wanted someone to find it. Or perhaps I wanted the right person to find it." He looked at her. "You." Seraphine's expression softened. "Perhaps." The system chimed again. Access window opening. Daniel felt a familiar pressure behind his eyes, but this time the memory came clearly. He remembered standing in the same chamber 8 years earlier. Seraphine had been younger then, though still composed and commanding. Daniel had placed his hand on the console and spoken quietly. "If I forget, I need you to make sure I never open this system alone." Seraphine had answered. "Then who should open it with you?" His younger self had looked directly at her. "Someone who knows what power costs." The memory faded. Daniel looked at Seraphine. "That is why you saluted me." She shook her head. "Not yet." "Then why?" She stepped forward and placed one hand over her chest. "Because you were the first human who refused to use this technology for himself." Daniel looked down at the ancient console. "I did not think that was special. To you, perhaps." She lowered her hand. "To us, it was extraordinary." The access window continued counting down. Daniel watched the numbers. 10 seconds. 9. 8. "What happens if we open it?" he asked. "We learn who has been searching for it. And if we refuse?" "We remain uncertain." Daniel smiled faintly. "I have had enough uncertainty." He placed his hand beside Seraphine's on the console. "Open it." The system accepted both signatures. The chamber filled with warm golden light. A new map appeared, revealing a network stretching toward Earth. Daniel's expression changed. "That is not a weapon." Seraphine nodded. "No, it is a bridge." "Yes." Another message appeared. "Human, Vera cooperation protocol available." Daniel stared at the words. Then he understood the final piece. The system had never been waiting for a soldier. It had been waiting for someone willing to share what they found without claiming it. Seraphine looked at him. "You once told me that power should belong to those who refuse to own it." Daniel gave a quiet laugh. "I said that." "You did." "I sounded smarter 8 years ago." She smiled. Then the system requested final authorization. Daniel looked at Seraphine. This time, neither of them hesitated. Together, they confirmed the protocol. Across the chamber, dormant lights awakened one after another, forming a path toward Earth. Daniel watched the first signal leave the station. He had spent 8 years believing he had forgotten something because he had been afraid. Now he understood the truth. He had forgotten because he had trusted someone else to help him remember at the right time. The chamber remained quiet after the final signal reached Earth, but Daniel Mercer could feel the flagship changing around him. The air vents shifted to a lower setting. The golden lights along the ancient walls faded into a calm blue, and the enormous star map above the console slowly rearranged itself. For the first time since his memories returned, Daniel felt something other than uncertainty. He felt relief. Then the system spoke. Human, Vera cooperation protocol acknowledged. Seraphine stood beside him, her sapphire skin reflecting the soft blue light. The network is open, she said. Daniel watched the path extending toward Earth. What happens now? Every connected station receives the same information, including whoever was looking for this technology? Seraphine nodded. Yes. Daniel exhaled. That seems less comforting than I expected. You expected secrecy to remain possible? I was hoping for a few minutes. A faint smile crossed her face. Humans always ask for a few minutes. Daniel looked at her. You remember that? I remember more than you think. She stepped toward the console and opened an older archive. A recording appeared. This one showed Daniel from 8 years earlier, standing in the same chamber. But this time, Seraphine was beside him. They looked younger, tired, focused. Daniel watched his younger self place a hand on the console. The system cannot belong to Earth, he said in the recording. It cannot belong to Vera, either. Seraphine's younger voice answered. Then who should control it? Daniel looked at her through the recording. Nobody. The word echoed softly through the chamber. Current Daniel stared at the screen. I really said that. Seraphine nodded. You did. The recording continued. If this network is ever activated, it must be shared. Daniel remembered now. Not just the technology. The conversation. The reason he had trusted her. They had spent days studying the ancient system and discovered that its purpose was not conquest or defense. It was connection. The network could link civilizations across distances that ordinary ships could never cross. It could share energy, navigation, scientific knowledge, emergency communications. It could change the galaxy. That was precisely why Daniel had refused to let one government control it. You agreed with me, he said. Seraphine looked at him. I still do. A soft tone interrupted them. A new transmission had arrived from Earth. The display showed a simple request for identification. Daniel stared at it. They are asking who activated the network. Seraphine looked at him. What will you tell them? Daniel thought about the 8 years he had spent without these memories. He thought about the transfer order, the old recording, the quiet decision to trust someone beyond his own world. Then he looked at the woman beside him. The truth. He opened the communication channel. This is Daniel Mercer, civilian systems engineer, aboard the Varan flagship Resolute Dawn. The network is active by mutual authorization. There was a long pause. Then the Earth station replied. Mr. Mercer, your identification is confirmed. We have no record of this authorization. Daniel smiled faintly. You probably have an old record. Another pause. We do. Seraphine watched him carefully. Then what does it say? The Earth operator asked. Daniel looked toward the ancient console. It says I was supposed to come back. The channel remained silent. Then the operator spoke again. Why? Daniel looked at Seraphine. She gave him a small nod. Because 8 years ago, he said, I learned that the safest way to protect something valuable was not to hide it forever. It was to find someone trustworthy enough to share it with. The ancient chamber seemed warmer after those words. The star map expanded until Earth and Vera were connected by a single luminous line. Seraphine looked at Daniel. You finally remembered. He nodded. I remembered why I trusted you. She raised her hand to her chest. Daniel noticed the familiar gesture. This time, he understood it completely. It was not military obedience. It was not recognition of rank. It was respect. Respect for the human who had once chosen responsibility without demanding authority, and who had returned years later to make the same choice again. Daniel gave a small smile. You can stop saluting me now. Seraphine's golden eyes brightened with quiet amusement. I do not think I can. Outside the chamber, the stars continued moving across the observation glass. Somewhere far away, Earth had received the first signal. Somewhere beyond the known routes, ancient stations were waking. And aboard the flagship, Daniel finally understood that the transfer had never been a mistake. It had been a promise waiting 8 years to be remembered. The first Earth transmission remained open for almost a full minute before another voice answered. It was older, calmer, and unmistakably human. Daniel Mercer, your authorization has been located. Daniel stood beside the ancient console, listening to the voice travel through technology that had been waiting for years. What does the record say? He asked. The answer came slowly. It says that if the network ever activates, you are to be given full civilian authority to negotiate its use. Daniel looked at Seraphine. Civilian authority? She smiled faintly. It seems your past self trusted civilians more than governments. He had excellent judgment. You are becoming very confident about a man you barely remember. Daniel looked toward the stars. I remember enough. The Earth channel remained quiet. Then the operator asked, "Who is with you?" Daniel glanced at Seraphine. General Seraphine Vera, commander of the Resolute Dawn. The operator paused. The Varen warlord? Seraphine lifted her chin. That is one description. Daniel almost smiled. The Earth operator continued. General, do you confirm the human authorization? Seraphine stepped closer to the console. I confirm it completely. And do you recognize the network as neutral territory? I do. Then Earth acknowledges the Varen claim to shared access. Daniel watched Seraphine's expression soften. The words mattered. Not because they granted power, but because they removed the need to fight over it. The ancient network responded with a gentle tone. Across the star map, additional points of light appeared. One after another, distant stations awakened. Communication pathways formed between worlds that had been isolated for generations. Daniel watched the map expand. How many civilizations are connected? He asked. Seraphine looked at the display. We do not know. That sounds like a problem. It sounds like an opportunity. He smiled. You are learning. She looked at him. From you. The Earth operator interrupted. Mr. Mercer, there is one final question. Daniel turned toward the speaker. Go ahead. Why did you disappear 8 years ago? Daniel was quiet. He could have given the simple answer. Memory alteration. Security. The network. Instead, he looked at Seraphine. She gave him no instruction. She simply waited. Daniel finally answered. Because I was afraid that if I remembered everything, I would make the same mistake again. What mistake? He looked at the ancient console. Thinking protection means keeping everything locked away. The channel fell silent. Daniel continued. I thought hiding the network would keep Earth safe. But I eventually understood that secrecy only protects an idea until someone else discovers it. Seraphine nodded slowly. And now, the operator asked. Daniel looked at the glowing path between Earth and Vera. Now we let people see what it can become. The final transmission ended. The chamber became quiet again. Seraphine stepped away from the console. You are going back to Earth. Daniel looked surprised. Am I? Your transfer can be reversed. And you? I have a fleet to command. Daniel looked toward the observation window. That seems fair. He started toward the exit. After several steps, he noticed Seraphine had not followed. He turned. She stood beneath the soft blue light, watching him. Then she raised one hand to her chest. Daniel stopped. You are doing it again. Yes. Why? Her golden eyes held his for a long moment. Because I finally understand what the salute means. Daniel waited. It is not for the soldier you were. Her voice softened. It is for the human you chose to become. Daniel said nothing. He only nodded. The doors opened behind him, revealing the quiet corridor. He walked away slowly, carrying no weapon, no rank, and no command. Only the memory he had once surrendered, and the knowledge that he had finally returned to the place where his forgotten choice had begun. Behind him, the ancient network continued to glow. Earth and Vera remained connected by a single line of light. And aboard the flagship, the alien warlord stood alone beneath the stars, her hand still raised in salute long after the human had left the room.